Drummond Island Dogman, chapters 9, 10, and 11. Chapter 9. The sun was sinking in the west, so we made our way through the forest and back to town. I dropped off Delaney at her house and told her I'd see her in the morning. Both of us didn't live too far from school, so we walked there every day. I parked the side-by-side in our garage on the right side. We have a two-car garage. Dad parks his truck on the left side, and we store the side-by-side on the right. However, it was still early, and Dad wasn't home. He had said that he had to go to St. Agnes for the day and would be catching the 5:45 ferry from Detour Village. That meant he would probably be home around 6:15. I went to the shed to check on Hops. The bottom hinge of the shed door had finally rusted away, and now I had to lift up on the handle to get it open. I carefully lifted and pulled, opened it all the way, and then leaned it against the outer wall. Dad said he'd grab a new hinge at the hardware store in St. Agnes. "Hey, Hops, old pal," I said to the rabbit in the cage. His cage door, like the shed, was broken. In fact, if he wanted to, Hops could easily get out by simply pushing on the little metal door. However, he'd never figured it out, so I wasn't worried about it. Besides, from outside of the cage, it wasn't possible to open unless you lifted the steel latch. I wasn't worried about a fox or a coyote figuring that out, which was why I kept Hops in the cage anyway. Hops scampered out, and I left him to bounce around on his own, free to exit the shed and nibble on bits of grass and bounce around the yard. I took the 2 dishes from his cage, filled one with rabbit food, and took the other inside to give him a fresh bowl of water. When I returned, Hops was sitting in the grass just outside the open door of the shed, gnawing on blades of grass. "How's the salad?" I asked as I walked past him and went into the shed. I put his water bowl in his cage, and then I heard gravel crunching. Dad's home, I thought, and I left the shed in time to see Dad's truck pulling into the driveway. I waved as he passed. He grinned, and he held up a pizza box for me to see. Awesome. Another gourmet dinner courtesy of Dad's takeout diner. "No pizza for you, buddy," I said to the rabbit, and I reached down and gave Hops a scratch behind his ears. Then I left him to his organic treat and went inside to have pizza with Dad and to tell him about the tracks we'd spotted on the pond. Unfortunately, I completely forgot that I hadn't put Hops back in his cage. That was something I'd remember in the middle of the night, when it was almost too late. Chapter 10. In the kitchen, I told Dad about the tracks we'd spotted. The 2 of us sat at the dining room table gobbling pizza. "It might have been a wolf, you know," he said. I shook my head, took a moment to chew a mouthful of pizza, and then spoke. "No," I replied, "the tracks were too big. They were bigger than my foot." "Well, that could have been caused by the soft ground," Dad said. "If the animal was moving, the tracks might appear larger than they were. My guess is that you probably surprised him. Wolves really don't want much to do with people, especially people riding off-road vehicles. He probably took off running when he heard you coming, making his tracks appear bigger as he ran." What Dad was saying seemed to make sense. Maybe the tracks did belong to a wolf. Maybe we had surprised the animal, like Dad suggested. Which was too bad. I would have liked to have seen a wolf in the wild. Still, there was that nagging feeling inside me that said a single word, a disagreeable word, a word I didn't like, not at that particular moment anyway. No. No. The word went around in my head while Dad was explaining that the tracks we'd spotted most likely belonged to a wolf. No. No, I knew better. Did I? I wasn't sure I agreed with Dad, but I wasn't sure that I was right either. Dad's explanation seemed to be the most reasonable, the most logical. My idea, Dogman, seemed far-fetched, something out of Fantasyland or a movie or a book. There's a guy somewhere in Michigan who writes creepy stories about things in different parts of the state. Aliens, ghosts, dinosaurs, things like that. Crazy things. Things that couldn't possibly be true, not by a long shot. Oh, he'll say they're all true stories, but they're not. That's what my idea sounded like. Fiction. Fantasy. Something dreamed up from someone's crazy imagination. Something that couldn't possibly be true. But that night, something would happen that gave me a pretty good indication that maybe what I was experiencing on Drummond Island wasn't fiction at all. It wasn't made up. It wasn't legend or folklore. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't make-believe. It was real. Chapter 11. 1 in the morning. My room was dark. I don't have a nightlight in my bedroom, and I sleep with the door closed because Dad's usually up late watching television. The noise keeps me up because I'm a pretty light sleeper. Any sound at all can wake me up, and it can be pretty annoying sometimes because then I often find it really hard to get back to sleep. But Dad goes to bed around 11:30. He turns off all the lights except for a tiny nightlight on the wall in the bathroom. The house becomes silent and cat-like, nestled safely within itself. I've never been afraid of the dark, especially in our house. The darkness, it seems to me, was comforting. It felt like protection, a sentry against anything that might be... What? Outside? No, that's not it. I wasn't afraid of anything outside or in the woods, even after dark. Maybe I just felt safer in our house after dark. The quiet, the calm, the peace of night seemed to ease any lingering troubles of the day. It was as though the darkness was telling me to rest, that tomorrow was a new day, a better day. But now something had caused me to stir, some odd noise of some sort beyond my bedroom window. And there it was again, a ruffling, shuffling sound. Gone. Silence. Stillness. Again, louder this time, more insistent. I sat up in bed, leaned over to the window, and peeled back the curtain a crack. Of course, it was impossible to see anything in the darkness. We don't have any outside lights. And on this particular night, the moon was obscured by a thick layer of clouds. I slid slowly open the window, and crisp, clean air licked on my face. October nights get cold on Drummond Island, a warning that winter's on its way. There it was again. A fluttering commotion, like paper slapping paper in 3 quick successions. Swish, swish, swish. I didn't recognize the sound, but there were any number of animals it could be. I was glad that Hops was safely... Hops! I suddenly remembered that I hadn't put him back in his cage, that I'd left him out with the shed door wide open.